Chosen one, have you ever been betrayed by the very people you'd take a bullet for? Have you been gaslit into believing your pain was paranoia, discarded like yesterday's news, and still somehow chosen to love anyway? And late at night, when the world goes quiet, do you wonder, did God even see any of it? Or could it be all of it was preparing you for something they could never touch? Listen to me, chosen one. Stop the video if you need to, but don't you dare scroll away, because what I'm about to tell you will crack open everything you thought you knew about why your life has been this hard. You weren't abandoned. You were set apart so the enemy could never reach your frequency. You were not overlooked. You were cloaked in divine protection because even the top demon knew your name before you did. That spiritual exhaustion you carry, that's not weakness. That's the weight of walking through dimensions most people can't even see. That repetition of betrayal, friend after friend, family member after family member, that wasn't bad luck. That was a coordinated attack on a soul they feared would wake up. And that soul-level loneliness, that haunting suspicion that something deeper is going on. You were right. Something deeper was going on. You weren't being punished. You were being positioned. They didn't break you. They revealed who they were and who you're not. You weren't forgotten. You were protected by isolation, because not everyone can handle the frequency you carry when you're fully awake. Your silence was divine restraint. Your tears were sacred data. Your forgiveness was spiritual warfare they couldn't decode. You didn't survive all that chaos for nothing. You survived it because heaven still needs your light. And the enemy? He's been trying to dim it before you figured out how bright it really is. You were not the target. You were the test, and they failed. If you're watching this right now, it's not by accident. It's by divine appointment. The algorithm didn't bring you here, your assignment did. And before we go deeper, thank you to everyone supporting this message through donations and super thanks. Your generosity isn't just seen, it's spiritual. You're not just giving. You're sowing light into voices that refuse to stay silent. Whether you give or not, I'm grateful you're here. Your presence matters. If your silence has ever echoed louder than your screams, drop 777 the comments right now. Type, "This message is my confirmation." Let the heavens know you're listening, because what comes next will shift everything you thought you knew about why you were attacked. And now, let's go deeper. They came for you in the dark, before you even knew your own name carried weight in realms they couldn't see. Before you understood that your DNA was encrypted with codes hell was never meant to crack. They moved against you while you were still learning how to walk in your own skin. You think that's coincidence? You were 3 years old when the first attack hit. Maybe it was the divorce that shattered your sense of safety. Maybe it was the uncle who stole your innocence. Maybe it was the mother who chose her addiction over your heartbeat. You blamed yourself. You carried that weight like it was your birthright. But chosen one, let me tell you what was really happening. They saw your power before you did. You weren't targeted because you were broken. You were targeted because you were dangerous. Not dangerous to people, dangerous to the system, dangerous to the lies they needed everyone else to believe. Your spirit carried a frequency that could wake up entire bloodlines. So they hit you early. They hit you hard. They hit you where it would hurt the deepest. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what they couldn't calculate. Here's what made them panic in boardrooms of darkness. Every wound they gave you was actually a doorway. Every betrayal was a revelation. Every abandonment was an appointment with your true power. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit thinking they were ending his story. They were writing the first chapter of his reign. David's own family overlooked him while Samuel searched for a king. God wasn't looking at the ones who looked the part. He was looking for the one who would play the music that drove demons out of hiding. You weren't hunted because you failed. You were hunted because you were already chosen to win. That spiritual exhaustion you've been carrying, that's not from fighting demons. That's from carrying glory they've been trying to steal since you took your first breath. That paranoia you feel when people get too close, that's not trauma. That's discernment. Your spirit has been trained to recognize energy signatures that don't belong in your atmosphere. Look at your life. Really look. The attacks weren't random. They were surgical. They went after your confidence because confident chosen ones change atmospheres. They went after your voice because your words carry creative power. They went after your relationships because when you're isolated, you can't activate others who are still sleeping. But here's the revelation that's about to crack your chest wide open. You think they hurt you because you weren't enough? They hurt you because you were too much for their illusion to survive. Your light was so bright, it was burning holes in their carefully constructed darkness. Your truth was so sharp, it was cutting through lies they'd spent generations building. Your love was so pure, it was exposing the counterfeit they'd been selling as authentic. So they tried to dim you. They tried to break you. They tried to convince you that your sensitivity was weakness, your depth was dysfunction, your gifts were delusions. But every time they threw you down, something inside you refused to stay there. Every time they counted you out, you found a way to rise. Every time they wrote your obituary, you rewrote it as your origin story. That's not human resilience. That's divine DNA. You've been walking around thinking you're damaged goods, thinking you're the problem, thinking if you could just fix yourself, heal yourself, shrink yourself small enough, maybe they'd finally accept you. But chosen one, listen to the sound of this truth echoing in your bones right now. You were never meant to be accepted by the very people you were sent to awaken. The rejection wasn't proof of your unworthiness. It was proof of your assignment. The betrayal wasn't evidence of your failure. It was evidence of your election. The isolation wasn't abandonment. It was preparation. They attacked you before you were awakened because they knew once you remembered who you are, their power over you would be finished. Once you stepped into your true identity, their whole system would start glitching. And now you're starting to remember. You're starting to feel that familiar fire in your chest again. That knowing, that unshakable sense that you were born for something bigger than surviving their small-minded cruelty. If you've ever been targeted for simply existing, if they came for you before you even knew you were a threat, confirm it now. Say it out loud. Let your own voice hear the truth your spirit has been whispering. I am not cursed. I was chosen. Drop 777-inch the comments if you feel that fire rising. Let the algorithm of heaven pick up your signal. Let every principality and power know you're done playing victim to a war you were always destined to win. Because what I'm about to show you next will prove that the very demons who tormented you in the dark are now scrambling to get out of your light. And they should be afraid. They should be very afraid. You've been swinging at shadows, chosen one, fighting wars that were never real, battling enemies that couldn't even breathe in the same dimension as your spirit. All those sleepless nights, wrestling with guilt that wasn't yours. All those tears shed over people who walked away without explanation. All that energy poured into trying to fix what they broke, heal what they wounded, prove what they questioned. You thought you were under attack. But here's the revelation that's about to shatter everything you believed about your pain. You were never under attack. You were under divine zeal. The enemy couldn't touch you, so he convinced you to touch yourself. He couldn't break you, so he whispered lies until you started breaking yourself. He couldn't reach your frequency, so he sent people to make you doubt it even existed. They can't grab what God has hidden inside divine frequency. Every betrayal you endured, that wasn't the devil winning. That was him failing to penetrate the shield around your spirit, so he used their hands instead. Every rejection that cut deep, that wasn't proof you weren't chosen. That was proof they couldn't handle the energy of someone who was. You thought it was warfare. It was spiritual envy. The top demon walks past broken people every day without a second glance. But your name is highlighted in his files. Not because you're weak, but because you're dangerous. Not because you're cursed, but because you're coded with something he can't decode. Think about it. Why do the most spiritually gifted people carry the deepest wounds? Why do the healers need the most healing? Why do the ones called to bring light walk through the most darkness? Because shadows only gather where light is about to break through. You've been fighting phantoms, chosen one, wrestling with projections. The real enemy wasn't in your face, he was in your thoughts. He wasn't attacking your body, he was attacking your belief in who you are. Every whisper that said you're not enough, that wasn't his voice. That was his desperation. Every moment you questioned your calling, that wasn't doubt. That was him panicking because your assignment was becoming clearer. The devil doesn't fight people he's already defeated. He only fights the ones he's terrified will wake up. Here's what they don't want you to know. While you were busy fighting shadows, heaven was busy building fortresses around your destiny. While you were crying over closed doors, angels were standing guard at the ones meant for you. While you were wondering why God felt silent, he was orchestrating a protection so complete that even your pain served your purpose. Job didn't know he was untouchable when the storm hit. Joseph didn't know he was protected when his brothers threw him in the pit. David didn't know he was sealed when Saul's spear missed his head. But the enemy knew. He's always known. That's why he couldn't come for you directly. That's why he had to use people. That's why he had to create illusions, send counterfeits, manufacture chaos. Because the real you, the awakened you, exists in a realm he's forbidden to enter. The top demon didn't attack you, he avoided you. Because your name lights up in realms they're forbidden to enter. Every time you survived what should have destroyed you, that wasn't luck. That was your divine encryption activating. Every time you walked through fire and came out unburned, that wasn't strength. That was your spiritual firewall working. You are not who you think you are. You are not as vulnerable as you feel. You are not as unprotected as your pain suggested. You are a walking temple with security systems they can't even see. You are a frequency wrapped in flesh that scrambles their radar. You are divine technology disguised as human vulnerability. The attacks were never about taking you out. They were about keeping you from finding out what you really are. But here's the moment everything shifts. You're finding out now. Every person who betrayed you was trying to break a code they couldn't read. Every institution that rejected you was sensing an authority they couldn't place. Every relationship that failed was crumbling under the weight of a calling they couldn't carry. They weren't fighting you. They were fighting the God signature on your life. And here's the most beautiful part. They lost before they even started. Because you can't fight what you can't touch. You can't break what's already sealed. You can't defeat what's been written in eternity. The devil has been throwing stones at bulletproof glass, thinking the cracks he sees are in you, but the cracks are in his own perception. The damage he thinks he's done exists only in the illusion he created. You are intact. You are untouched. You are unbreakable. Say it out loud. The devil can't decode me. You are a divine encryption. The same voice that spoke light into darkness spoke your name into destiny. The same power that parted the Red Sea sealed your path before you were born. The same God who shut the lions' mouths around Daniel has been shutting the enemy's access to your true identity. You've been fighting demons that can't even find you in the spirit. You've been battling forces that lost the war the moment you drew your first breath. So why does it feel so real? Because spiritual warfare isn't about what happens to you, it's about what happens in you. It's not about the attacks you face, it's about the truth you embrace. The moment you stop fighting shadows and start walking in light, the illusion collapses. The moment you stop defending yourself and start declaring yourself, the battlefield disappears. Because there was never a battlefield. There was only a revelation waiting to be unwrapped. And right now, chosen one, you're unwrapping it. Drop 777 if you feel the shift happening, if you're ready to stop fighting what can't touch you and start walking in what they can't reach. Because what comes next will show you exactly why even the highest-ranking demons keep their distance when your name comes up in their meetings. You know what they never told you about earthquakes? They don't happen to the ground. They happen from the ground. The earth doesn't get shaken, the earth does the shaking. And every building, every structure, every false foundation that can't handle the frequency, it crumbles. You've been looking at your life all wrong. You thought you were the victim of the storm. But what if you were the storm? What if every room you walked into that suddenly got uncomfortable? Every family gathering that turned tense the moment you arrived? Every workplace that started falling apart after you showed up? What if that wasn't because you brought chaos? What if you brought truth? And truth is the most disruptive force in the universe. They didn't hurt you because they had power over you. They panicked because you shifted the spiritual ground beneath them just by breathing. Your presence alone was rearranging the atmosphere. Your energy was exposing every lie they'd built their identity on. And when people realize their whole life is constructed on quicksand, they don't thank the earthquake. They blame it. But you were never the problem. You were the solution walking into a system that was already broken. Think about Joseph, thrown in a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned for years. The whole time, everyone around him is saying, "Look at this cursed man. Trouble follows him everywhere." But Joseph wasn't cursed. Joseph was coded, programmed by heaven to disrupt every false system he encountered, until he ended up exactly where God needed him to be. The same brothers who threw him in the pit, they ended up bowing before his throne. You see, chosen one, your stillness was never weakness. Your stillness was the storm. While they were making noise, creating drama, stirring up dust, you were moving tectonic plates in the spirit realm. Your silence wasn't surrender. Your silence was the signal from heaven that something was about to shift. And it did shift. Look around. Where are they now? Where are the people who celebrated your pain? Where are the ones who built their confidence on your confusion? They're scrambling. They're lost. They're wondering why their lives suddenly feel unstable, why their relationships are cracking, why their peace has evaporated. And deep down, in the places they don't want to admit, they know it started when they touched you. When they came for someone heaven had already sealed. Remember David in that cave at Adullam? Everyone said he was running from Saul. Everyone said he was defeated, desperate, done. But what was really happening? The misfits, the broken, the discarded, they were all being drawn to David's frequency. Not because he was weak, but because he carried something they'd never seen before. Something that couldn't be faked or bought or inherited. Divine authority in human skin. And while Saul was losing his mind on the throne, David was building an army in the darkness. The very cave they thought was his prison became his training ground. The isolation they mocked became his incubation. Sound familiar? They didn't break you, they awakened you. Every betrayal was an activation. Every rejection was a redirection. Every time they left you alone, they were unknowingly giving you space to connect with the source they couldn't touch. And now the whole system is glitching. They built their world around your silence. They constructed their peace on your pain. They made their identity dependent on your imprisonment. But the moment you started rising, the moment you began to remember who you really are, their entire matrix started malfunctioning. Because you were never meant to stay down. You were meant to demonstrate. Every tear you cried in secret, that was you watering seeds they couldn't see. Every night you spent alone, wondering if God had forgotten you, you were being downloaded with wisdom they'll spend their whole lives trying to buy. Every time you chose forgiveness over revenge, grace over grudges, silence over slander, you were building spiritual muscle they don't even know exists. You weren't just surviving, you were becoming. And what you became, it's terrifying to a system built on control, manipulation, and fear. You walk into rooms now, and the energy shifts. Not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you've stopped pretending to be smaller than you are. Your presence alone is a rebuke to every lie they told about you. Your peace is an indictment of their chaos. Your growth is evidence that everything they said was impossible isn't. They used to look at you and see a victim. Now they look at you and see a verdict. Proof that the universe doesn't forget. Evidence that what goes around comes around. A living reminder that every seed planted in darkness eventually breaks through the soil. You are not the victim of their choices. You are the consequence of their actions. You are not the target of their anger. You are the trigger of their guilt. They see you thriving, and it mirrors back everything they could have been if they'd chosen love over fear, truth over comfort, growth over stagnation. And that reflection, it's burning them alive. But here's what's wild about earthquakes. They don't apologize for the damage they caused to structures that weren't built to last. They don't feel guilty for exposing weak foundations. They just shake. And everything that's supposed to stand, stands. Everything that's supposed to fall, falls. You've been apologizing for being an earthquake in a world full of house of cards. Stop. Your job was never to make everyone comfortable. Your job was to wake them up. And if they can't handle the frequency of an awakened soul, that's not your problem. That's their poverty. Elijah thought he was alone on that mountain, thought he was the only one left who still believed. But God said, I have 7,000 who have never bowed their knee to Baal. You think you're isolated, but you're actually part of an army. You think you're abandoned, but you're actually positioned. And the enemy? He knows it. That's why he worked so hard to convince you that you were the problem. Because the moment you realize you're the solution, the game changes. The moment you understand that you weren't broken by the chaos, you were forged by it, everything shifts. You stop asking, why me? And start declaring, why not me? You stop hiding your light and start wielding it. You stop apologizing for your intensity and start owning your fire. Because you were never the earthquake's victim. You were always the earthquake itself. And everything that couldn't handle your frequency, it was supposed to fall. If your glow has ever caused chaos, if your growth has ever triggered panic, if your peace has ever made others uncomfortable, type it now. I am the shift. Own it. Because the tremor they felt when you walked away, that was just the aftershock. The real earthquake is what you're becoming. And every false foundation they built their lives on is about to discover what happens when the chosen one stops playing small. The ground beneath their lies is about to move. And this time, you're not running from the shaking. You are the shaking. You know what they never told you when the world turned its back? When your own family started looking at you sideways? When friends became strangers overnight and opportunities dried up like desert rain? They never told you that your name was already carved in stone before the first star lit up the sky. You've been walking around thinking you're disposable, thinking maybe you said the wrong thing, moved the wrong way, trusted the wrong people. You've been carrying guilt that was never yours to hold, wondering if God forgot to save your seat at the table. But right now, I need you to feel this truth vibrate through your bones. Your life is written in divine ink. No edits, no erasure. Every betrayal you survived, every door that slammed, every dream they told you was too big, every time they made you feel small, every silent night you cried yourself to sleep wondering if you mattered at all. None of it was random. None of it was punishment. It was all part of a contract signed before you took your first breath. See, when heaven draws up your blueprint, it doesn't use pencil. It doesn't write in rough draft. The Creator doesn't second-guess his masterpieces. What God authors, no demon can edit. What heaven seals, hell cannot break. They tried to rewrite your story, didn't they? Tried to convince you that your pain was proof of your punishment, that your struggles meant you were cursed, that your silence meant you were forgotten. But here's what they couldn't see through their spiritual blindness. They tried to change the script, but heaven already signed off on your victory. You think Joseph didn't feel forgotten in that pit? You think David didn't question his anointing when he was running from Saul? You think Job didn't wonder if God had torn up his contract when everything fell apart? But the contract was never voided. It was being validated. Every attack on your character was heaven double-checking your signature. Every season of isolation was God protecting the fine print of your purpose. Every time they tried to dim your light, the universe was calibrating your brightness for what's coming. You weren't being erased, you were being authenticated. And right now, while you're listening to this, something's shifting in the spiritual realm. The same forces that tried to nullify your calling are starting to realize they've been fighting a losing battle, because you can't cancel what was never up for cancellation. Your contract isn't just active, it's irrevocable. Every tear you cried in secret, that was sacred ink sealing your testimony. Every night you stayed faithful when faith felt foolish, that was your signature on an eternal agreement. Every time you chose love when hate would have been easier, that was you co-signing with the Creator on a destiny they'll never understand. They thought they were blocking your blessings, but here's the revelation that's about to blow your mind. They didn't block your blessings, they verified your anointing. Every obstacle they placed was heaven's way of proving you were the real deal. Every wall they built was God's way of showing the spiritual realm that you wouldn't quit when the pressure got heavy. Every time they tried to make you smaller, they were actually confirming that your calling was too big for their comfort zone. You want to know why the attacks came so hard? Why the betrayal cut so deep? Why the isolation felt so complete? Because your contract has a no substitution clause. There's no understudy for your assignment, no backup plan for your purpose, no plan B for your calling. Hell knew it. That's why they threw everything at you. Because if they could break you, if they could make you walk away from who you were created to be, there would be no replacement. But you didn't break. You didn't walk away. You're still here. And that terrifies them. Right now, as you hear these words, I want you to feel the weight of this truth settling into your spirit like lead into gold. You are not an accident waiting to be corrected. You are not a mistake hoping to be forgiven. You are not a rough draft praying to become final copy. You are a sealed decree walking in human skin. Your heartbreak was predicted and permitted not to destroy you, but to prepare you for a love so deep it requires scars to hold it. Your betrayal was foreseen and factored in not to isolate you, but to introduce you to a loyalty that never wavers. Your delay was documented and deliberate not to deny you, but to develop you for a timing so perfect it will silence every doubt. The contract over your life doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't depend on your performance or your perfection. It depends on His promise. And God doesn't break promises. He keeps them in ways that make your enemies wonder how you're still standing, still shining, still believing after everything they put you through. If you're feeling this truth, ignite something deep inside your chest right now. If you're starting to remember that you're not here by accident, that you're not disposable, that you're not forgotten, then type this declaration into the comments. My contract is still active. Let hell know heaven still has you on file. Let the universe register that you remember who you are. Let every force that tried to erase you know that divine ink doesn't fade, because the same God who numbered every hair on your head also numbered every day of your assignment. And the countdown isn't to your destruction, it's to your revelation. And what's about to be revealed is going to make every attack look like confirmation, every betrayal look like preparation, and every delay look like divine strategy. The contract is sealed, the terms are set, and the payout is about to be legendary. You know that moment when you realized the thing that almost killed you was actually the thing that made you immortal? That betrayal that cut so deep you couldn't breathe for months. That rejection that made you question if you were even worth loving. That abandonment that left you talking to empty rooms, begging God to explain why everyone you trusted became everyone who hurt you. You thought it was your ending. But what if I told you it was your coronation? See, they don't tell you in church that some blessings come wrapped in trauma. They don't explain that sometimes God has to strip everything fake away from you before He can reveal everything real inside you. They never mention that the fire wasn't sent to destroy you, it was sent to decode you. You were not scarred, you were sealed. Every wound they left became a portal. Every tear you cried in secret became holy water. Every night you survived when you wanted to disappear became proof that something divine was keeping you here for a reason they couldn't see but heaven couldn't ignore. You think Job knew he was being refined when everything he loved was ripped away. You think Joseph understood he was being positioned when his own brothers threw him in that pit. You think David realized he was being prepared for a crown when he was hiding in caves, running from the very people who should have celebrated him? They didn't know, and neither did you. But that doesn't mean it wasn't happening. That fire you walked through, that hell that had your name on it, that wasn't random. That was recruitment. The universe was putting you through spiritual boot camp because regular training doesn't create the kind of warrior you were destined to become. They thought fire was your end, but it was your initiation into glory. And now look at you, still breathing, still believing, still choosing love even after love chose violence against you, still extending grace even after grace was denied to you, still standing even after they did everything in their power to make you fall. You didn't just survive the fire, you became it. That strength you carry now, that wasn't there before the flames. That wisdom you speak, that wasn't in your vocabulary before the betrayal. That peace you walk in, that didn't exist before the storm taught you how to be still while everything around you was falling apart. They broke you open thinking they were breaking you down, but what they didn't realize is that some souls can only access their full power after they've been cracked by pressure. You were a seed that needed to be buried before you could grow. You were a diamond that needed compression before you could shine. The pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Every person who walked away cleared space for your real tribe. Every door that closed redirected you toward your true calling. Every tear that fell watered the ground where your new life was about to bloom. You spent so many nights asking God why He let it happen. But the question was never why. The question was what? What was He building inside you that required that level of heat to forge? What kind of power was He activating that needed that much pressure to unlock? And now you know. You're not the same person who entered that fire. You're not carrying the same energy. You're not operating from the same frequency. Something fundamental shifted in the flames. Something that can't be taught, can't be faked, can't be replicated. That hell you walked through, it didn't leave smoke behind it, left an aura they can't decode. People look at you now and feel something they can't name. There's a weight to your presence that wasn't there before. A depth to your silence that speaks louder than their noise. A light in your eyes that burns brighter than their darkness. They thought they were watching your funeral, but what they witnessed was your resurrection. See, there's a difference between surviving fire and being baptized by it. Survival means you made it through. Baptism means you came out transformed. Survival leaves you grateful. Baptism leaves you glowing. And you're not just a survivor. You're a walking testimony to what happens when God decides to rebuild someone from the inside out. That's why your story sounds impossible to people who've never been chosen for impossible transformations. That's why your peace confuses people who think trauma should leave you bitter. That's why your love threatens people who use their pain as an excuse to stay closed off. You're living proof that fire doesn't have to leave you burned. Sometimes it leaves you blessed. Every scar tells a story of victory. Every wound became a window for light to pour through. Every break became a place where something stronger could grow back together. You weren't just refined in that fire. You were redefined. And now when other people are facing their flames, you don't just offer sympathy, you offer strategy. You don't just understand their pain, you carry the blueprint for their transformation. You've become the proof they need that hell is not a permanent address, it's a temporary assignment. That's the power of being baptized by fire instead of burned by it. You don't just heal, you become healing for others. So stop apologizing for your intensity. Stop dimming your light because it makes comfortable people uncomfortable. Stop explaining your transformation to people who are still afraid of their own fire. You made it out glowing. And that glow, that's not just personal, that's prophetic. If you made it out the fire-glowing type, my burn became my blessing. Because what's coming next will show you exactly why that fire had to burn as hot as it did. The enemy wasn't just trying to stop you, he was trying to prevent what you were about to become. And now, it's too late for him to stop it. You know what they never told you about that season when everything went quiet? When the phone stopped ringing? When the invitations dried up? When even your own family started acting like you were invisible? They called it rejection. They whispered about your fall from grace. But what if I told you that wasn't abandonment, that was ascension? What if I told you that the moment you stopped trying to fit into spaces too small for your spirit, you didn't disappear, you transcended? Chosen one, you've been operating under a lie. You thought that silence meant you were forgotten. You thought that isolation meant you were cursed. You thought that distance meant you were damaged goods. But listen to what's really been happening while you've been healing in the shadows. Your spirit isn't camouflaged, it's cloaked in divine light. You think you've been hiding? You've been rising into a frequency so high, so pure, so aligned with heaven's frequency, that the lower realms can't even detect you anymore. You're not lost in the darkness. You're luminous in dimensions they can't access. Remember when David was anointed king but had to live in caves? The enemy knew he was chosen, but couldn't find him because God wrapped him in divine concealment. That wasn't punishment, that was protection. That wasn't exile, that was encryption. You've been asking God, why can't they see me? But God's been saying, exactly. Every betrayal that pushed you deeper into solitude wasn't pushing you down, it was pushing you up. Every door that slammed in your face wasn't closing you out, it was sealing you into a realm where their weapons can't reach. You thought you were being buried alive, but you were being planted in sacred soil. And now you're blooming in a garden they don't even know exists. Here's what's happening in the spirit realm while you've been questioning your worth. The enemy is throwing darts into a dimension they can't enter. They're aiming at coordinates that no longer exist on their GPS. They're searching for a frequency that's been relocated to heaven's private network. You want to know why that narcissist suddenly went quiet? Why that toxic friend stopped calling? Why the people who used to drain you dry are no longer interested in your energy? It's not because you became boring. It's because you became invisible to spiritual vampires. Your vibe shifted, your frequency upgraded, and now you're transmitting on a channel they're not equipped to receive. You're not hiding from them. You're radiating beyond them. But let me go deeper. Let me show you something that's going to blow your mind. All those years you spent wondering why you felt different, why you couldn't connect with people the way everyone else seemed to, why small talk felt like spiritual suffocation that wasn't your weakness. That was your wiring. You were never meant to vibrate at their level. You were hardwired for heaven's bandwidth. And every time you tried to dumb down your signal to match their static, you were causing interference in your own system. That exhaustion you felt around certain people, that wasn't social anxiety. That was your spirit alerting you that you were operating below your natural frequency. That restlessness in toxic environments, that wasn't you being difficult. That was your soul screaming, we don't belong in low vibration spaces. And when you finally stopped forcing connections that felt like spiritual allergies, when you finally stopped apologizing for your depth, when you finally embraced the solitude that scared everyone else, that's when you found your frequency. Now you're operating from a place they can't map, can't hack, can't attack. They're swinging at shadows, but you're the ghost they can't grab because you're in alignment. You think Job was just sitting in ashes complaining? Number. He was in spiritual isolation while God was building a force field around his destiny. The enemy could touch his possessions, could touch his family, could touch his body, but couldn't touch his frequency. And in the end, everything the enemy stole got returned doubled, because God's man was operating from a realm the devil couldn't locate. That's where you are now, untouchable. Not because you're hiding, but because you're glowing in a spectrum they can't see. Every person who walked out of your life during your transformation wasn't rejecting you, they were being repelled by your new frequency. Like oil and water, like light and darkness, like truth and illusion, you became incompatible with everything fake. And here's the part that's going to make you laugh through your tears. They can't figure out why they can't get under your skin anymore. They can't understand why their old tricks don't work. They can't comprehend why you're not reacting to their chaos. It's because you're not there anymore. You're here, in this realm, this protected space, this divine frequency where their noise becomes background static and their attacks become gentle breezes. You're in a realm they can't touch. Say it now, I'm in a realm they can't touch. Say it until it echoes in your bones. Say it until your spirit remembers. Say it until the atmosphere around you shifts to match the truth you're declaring. Because what I'm about to show you next is going to explain why even their thoughts about you have started backfiring, why their curses have become blessings in disguise, why every weapon formed against you hasn't just failed, it's boomeranged back to sender with compound interest. You're not just protected now, you've become the protection. And they're about to find out what happens when you mess with someone who's wrapped in light they can't decode. You know what's happening right now, chosen one? While you've been healing in silence, while you've been rising in secret, while you've been glowing behind closed doors, they've been losing their minds. Not because you did anything to them, but because you stopped being their mirror. See, they were never really fighting you. They were fighting what you showed them about themselves. Every time they looked at your peace, it reminded them of their chaos. Every time they saw your authenticity, it exposed their performance. Every time they witnessed your healing, it highlighted their wounds. You weren't the villain, you were the mirror they couldn't survive. And now that you've stepped back, now that you've gone quiet, now that you've removed your energy from their circus, they're left staring at themselves. And baby, they don't like what they see. Remember when they called you dramatic? When they said you were too sensitive or always the victim? Remember how they painted you as unstable, unreasonable, impossible to deal with, that wasn't about you. That was projection in its purest form. They threw stones at your character and broke the mask hiding their own shadow. Because here's what really happened. You triggered their unhealed trauma just by existing. Your boundaries made their chaos uncomfortable. Your growth made their stagnation obvious. Your light made their darkness undeniable. So they did what wounded people do. They tried to dim your brightness instead of dealing with their own darkness. But now you're gone. And guess what they're discovering? The drama didn't leave with you. The chaos didn't disappear when you walked away. The problems they blamed on you, still there, still screaming, still demanding attention. Because you were never the source of their storms. You were just the lightning rod they used to avoid dealing with the thunder inside their own souls. David knew this feeling. When King Saul threw spears at him, it wasn't because David was a threat to the kingdom. It was because David's anointing reminded Saul of what he'd lost. The attacks weren't about David's character, they were about Saul's insecurity. Same energy, different century, same God, same protection. You didn't ruin their peace, your presence exposed they never had any. Think about it. How peaceful can someone be if your existence disturbs them? How secure can they be if your success threatens them? How healed can they be if your boundaries trigger them? The answer is simple. They weren't. And now that you've removed yourself from their equation, they're forced to face the mathematics of their own misery. Without you to blame, without you to project onto, without you to use as their emotional dumping ground, they're drowning in their own unprocessed pain. They're not fighting you anymore. Chosen one. They're wrestling their reflection and losing. Every sleepless night they have now, that's not about you. That's about them finally hearing the voices they've been running from their whole lives. Every relationship that falls apart in your absence, that's not your fault. That's the natural consequence of people who never learn to love without control, support without conditions, or stay without drama. Every door that closes for them while yours are opening, that's not coincidence. That's the universe recalibrating energy. What goes around comes around. What you sow, you reap. What you project, you attract. You were the mirror that showed them their truth. And when they couldn't handle the reflection, they tried to break the glass. But you can't shatter what God has made whole. You can't destroy what heaven has declared indestructible. So they broke themselves instead. And here's the part that's driving them crazy. You're not even thinking about them anymore. You're not losing sleep over their opinion. You're not checking their social media. You're not wondering if they're okay. You've moved on. And your peace is the loudest middle finger they've ever experienced. Your silence is more devastating than any comeback you could have given. Your absence is more powerful than any argument you could have won. Your healing is more threatening than any revenge you could have planned. Because when someone who was supposed to be broken starts glowing, it makes everyone who's still fractured feel exposed. They wanted you to stay small so they could feel big. They wanted you to stay wounded so they could feel healed. They wanted you to stay confused so they could feel wise. But you didn't cooperate with their delusion. You chose transformation over bitterness. You chose elevation over retaliation. You chose yourself over their approval. And now they're left holding a handful of projections that don't stick to you anymore. They're throwing darts at a target that's no longer there. They're fighting a war with an enemy who's already won by walking away. Say it now. If you know the truth hurts them more than your silence ever did. I was the mirror. Type it, declare it, own it. Because when you were reflecting their dysfunction back to them, you weren't being cruel. You were being honest. When you were showing them their patterns, you weren't being judgmental. You were being clear. And when you finally walked away, you weren't giving up. You were graduating from their classroom of chaos into your destiny of peace, from their cycle of drama into your season of purpose, from their reflection into your own light. They're not your enemy anymore, chosen one. They're your testimony. Living proof of what happens when someone chooses projection over introspection, blame over healing, control over growth. Let them wrestle with their reflection. You've got a destiny to fulfill. And that destiny, it's calling your name louder than their chaos ever could. Because what's coming next will show you exactly why the enemy worked so hard to keep you distracted by their mirrors. When you could have been focused on your throne. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the energy shifts? When conversations stop mid-sentence and people suddenly find their phones fascinating. When toxic relatives who used to run their mouth go quiet the second you step through the door. That's not social anxiety, chosen one. That's spiritual hierarchy recognizing itself. See, while you've been apologizing for taking up space, while you've been shrinking to make others comfortable, while you've been wondering why people treat you different, something ancient has been stirring in the atmosphere around you. Something they feel but can't name. something that makes their spirit recoil before their mind even processes you're in the building. You think it's because you're awkward. You think it's because you said the wrong thing 5 years ago. You think it's because you're not cool enough, rich enough, connected enough. But let me crack this code wide open for you. They don't avoid you because you're lacking something. They avoid you because you're carrying something they recognize but refuse to acknowledge. Your presence doesn't just fill a room, it restructures it. You don't just enter spaces, you realign them. Remember Job? When his so-called friends came to comfort him, they sat in silence for 7 days because they felt the weight of divine mystery on his life. They couldn't speak because they were in the presence of someone heaven was personally supervising. That silence wasn't respect, it was recognition. That's what's happening to you. They're not ignoring you. They're intimidated by what they sense but can't decode. You don't cast out demons, you confuse their compass. Your frequency scrambles their GPS. They show up expecting to feed on chaos and find themselves lost in a field of divine static they can't penetrate. While lesser spirits throw tantrums and make noise, high-ranking principalities move different. They study, they calculate, they know when to engage and when to retreat. And when they encounter a soul walking in sealed authority, they don't attack, they avoid. Because attacking you would be like a moth declaring war on a lighthouse. The light doesn't fight the moth, it just burns. You've been carrying this authority so long you forgot it was abnormal. You normalized the way people get nervous around your prayers. You brushed off how situations shift when you speak peace over them. You downplayed how your forgiveness breaks generational cycles, how your silence carries more weight than their screaming. But the enemy? He's been keeping spreadsheets on your movements. They tremble not because you fight, but because you walk in sealed authority. You don't announce your power, you just move in it. You don't need validation from flesh and blood because your clearance comes from dimensions they can't access. Think about this. When Elijah showed up on Mount Carmel, he didn't have to prove he was a prophet. The atmosphere announced it. Fire fell not because he begged, but because heaven recognized its own agent operating in enemy territory. That's your spiritual DNA. You're not just a believer asking for blessings. You're an agent carrying divine clearance. That's why your no shakes foundations. That's why your boundaries feel like earthquakes to people used to walking all over others. See, the devil has a hierarchy, a chain of command, and at the top sits something that doesn't waste time on small-scale harassment. It delegates those jobs to lesser demons while it focuses on cosmic-level warfare. But when that top-tier entity encounters a soul walking in government-level authority, it takes notes. It doesn't try to possess you because your spiritual title is too high. It doesn't try to deceive you because your discernment cuts through illusion like light through darkness. It doesn't even try to distract you because your focus is supernaturally locked on assignments it can't touch. Instead, it does something more dangerous. It studies your pattern, looking for the moment you forget who you are. It waits for you to doubt your authority, to apologize for your anointing, to shrink back into insecurity. But here's what it didn't count on. Every betrayal only confirmed your calling. Every rejection only refined your frequency. Every attack only amplified your authority. Even the top demon can't decode your next move because heaven encrypted your entire walk. Your steps are guided by intelligence networks operating in dimensions that predate time itself. Your decisions flow from strategies written before the foundation of the world. You think you're winging it, making it up as you go along. But your path has been calculated by the same mind that numbered every star and named every galaxy. Your journey isn't random, it's classified information unfolding in real time. That's why when you walk into spiritual warfare, you don't come in swinging. You come in knowing. You don't fight for victory, you walk in it. You don't beg for breakthrough, you carry the keys that unlock what others can't even see is locked. The enemy doesn't fear your anger. Anger is predictable, manageable, manipulatable. What terrifies the kingdom of darkness is your peace, your calm in the storm, your silence in the chaos, your ability to walk through hell and come out glowing instead of burned. Because peace is not the absence of conflict, it's the presence of divine government. And when you carry that government in your spirit, lesser authorities have no choice but to bow. You're not fighting demons anymore. You're confusing them. They show up expecting warfare and find worship. They come looking for fear and find faith. They arrive planning chaos and discover divine order already established. That's what it means to walk in authority that's not of this world. You don't have to announce it, demand it, or perform it. You just are it. And everything in the spiritual realm, from the smallest lying spirit to the highest principality, feels the weight of heaven's stamp on your life. So stop apologizing for the space you take up. Stop shrinking to make demons comfortable. Stop questioning why they treat you different. They treat you different because you are different. You carry what they fear. You walk in what they can't touch. You operate from a jurisdiction they don't have clearance to enter. Drop this line if you know you're covered. I walk in what they fear. Because when you finally accept the authority heaven placed on your life, even the top demon will have to recalculate his strategy. And by then, it'll be too late. Your authority was never in question, only your awareness of it was. But now that's changing too. They called you broken. They whispered behind closed doors that you'd never amount to anything. They watched you stumble through betrayal after betrayal, relationship after relationship, disappointment after crushing disappointment, and they shook their heads like they were watching a tragedy unfold. But what if I told you they were watching the wrong movie? What if every wound was a commissioning, every rejection, a redirection, every moment you felt abandoned in that cold, empty space where your screams echoed back as silence? What if that wasn't abandonment at all? What if that was boot camp? You see, chosen one, there's something they never told you about the way heaven operates. When God needs someone deployed into the darkest territories of this earth, He doesn't send the untested. He doesn't dispatch the comfortable. He sends the ones who've walked through hell and came back with fire in their eyes. You are not a wounded soul. You are a cosmic disruption. Every scar on your spirit is a badge of rank. Every tear you cried in secret was intel gathering. Every time you forgave the unforgivable, you were practicing supernatural warfare. They thought they were breaking you down. But heaven was building you up into a weapon they never saw coming. You didn't ask to be chosen, but God assigned angels to ensure your mission never fails. Think about Joseph in that pit. You think that was punishment? That was positioning. David hiding in caves while Saul hunted him like an animal. You think that was divine abandonment? That was divine training. Elijah, sitting by that brook, fed by ravens while the world burned around him. Isolation? Number. That was preparation for a showdown on Mount Carmel that would shake kingdoms. And you, sitting in your own wilderness seasons, wondering why God went silent. You weren't being ignored. You were being programmed. Every betrayal calibrated your discernment. Every heartbreak expanded your capacity for supernatural love. Every season where you had to stand alone taught you that your source isn't human approval, it's heaven's assignment. They stripped away every false foundation so you'd learn to stand on the one thing that can't be shaken, divine purpose. You've been walking around thinking you're damaged goods, but what if you're actually a finished product? What if every pain point was a download, every trauma, a transmission from dimensions you didn't even know existed? What if your sensitivity isn't weakness, it's advanced spiritual technology? What if your ability to feel what others can't is because you're wired to operate in realms they can't even perceive? The enemy didn't attack you because you were vulnerable. He attacked you because he saw the deployment orders written in your DNA. You think it's coincidence that your life has been this hard? You think it's bad luck that you keep ending up in situations that require supernatural intervention to survive? No, chosen one. You've been enrolled in an accelerated program. While others were learning basic addition, you were doing spiritual calculus. While they were playing in sandboxes, you were being forged in furnaces. And now you're ready. You walk into rooms and atmospheres shift. You don't even have to say a word, your presence rewrites the spiritual climate. Demons that used to torment others flee when they sense you're in the building. Not because you're loud, but because you carry an authority they recognize from higher courts. You've become what darkness fears most. Someone who's been to hell and chose to come back glowing. That quiet strength you carry, that's not recovery, that's deployment readiness. That peace that surpasses understanding flowing through you even in chaos, that's not therapy, that's tactical advantage. That way you can see through people's masks within minutes of meeting them, that's not paranoia, that's prophetic intel. You were not born to be understood. You were deployed to be undeniable. Every person who said you'd never make it is about to watch you operate in dimensions they don't have clearance to enter. Every voice that told you to lower your expectations is about to witness you exceed their comprehension. Every system that tried to keep you small is about to discover they were containing a nuclear reaction. See, they thought if they could keep you confused about your identity, you'd never step into your authority. They thought if they could convince you that you're just another broken soul trying to heal, you'd never realize you're actually a cosmic agent on assignment. But the masquerade is over. The training wheels are off. The safety protocols have been lifted, and what's emerging from the ashes of everything they destroyed isn't a survivor, it's a disruptor. Not a victim, but a victor with classified information about how to turn dungeons into thrones. You've been walking in stealth mode, but now it's time to decloak. It's time to stop apologizing for your intensity, stop explaining your standards, stop dimming your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. You weren't sent here to blend in. You were sent here to wake people up, shake systems up, and turn the whole spiritual temperature up until lies can't survive in the same room with you. The angels assigned to your case aren't suggestion angels. They're enforcement angels. The prayers going up on your behalf aren't requests. They're confirmations of what's already been decreed. The promises written over your life aren't hopeful wishes. They're spiritual contracts signed in blood that can't be deleted, amended, or expired. Every giant you face is already defeated. Every obstacle in your path is already moved. Every door that needs to open is already unlocked. You're not walking into uncertainty, you're walking into appointments that have been scheduled since before you took your first breath. This is your moment. This is your hour. This is your awakening to the truth that you are not just chosen, you are commissioned, deployed, and backed by armies they can't see but they can definitely feel. If this hits you in your soul, declare it right now. Type it in the comments. I am sealed. I am sent. I am unstoppable. Let the algorithm of heaven pick up your signal and connect you with every other agent who's been waiting for this moment to remember who they really are. Because what happens next isn't just your breakthrough. It's the beginning of the assignment you were always meant to complete. And they have no idea what's about to hit them. You know that feeling when everyone around you seems to be moving forward while you're stuck in neutral? When opportunities slip through your fingers like water? When doors slam shut just as you reach for the handle? When your name gets passed over again and again until you start wondering if you're invisible? That wasn't rejection. That was divine concealment. You weren't forgotten. You were folded into a prophecy too powerful to drop early. See, the enemy has been watching heaven's roster since before you took your first breath. He's got scouts in every realm, tracking divine assignments, monitoring spiritual deployments. And when your name lit up on the celestial manifest, when your mission briefing was filed in the courts of heaven, panic spread through the demonic hierarchy like wildfire. They knew what you carried before you did. So God did what any strategic commander would do. He classified your operation, sealed your orders, put you in spiritual witness protection while your gifts were being calibrated, your authority was being activated, your arsenal was being loaded. That silence around your life, that wasn't abandonment. That was God's security system. Every time you wondered why your breakthrough was taking so long, why your purpose felt delayed, why you were stuck in seasons that seemed to stretch forever, you were actually in heaven's loading screen, not forgotten, not overlooked, not abandoned, like a nuclear core waiting in darkness until the appointed moment. Your presence was locked tight because the world wasn't ready for what happens when you go fully operational. You thought you were late. You were actually being shielded. You thought you were behind. You were being hidden until the enemy's defenses were down. Joseph spent 13 years in pits and prisons before Pharaoh's palace. David ran through caves for years before claiming his crown. Even Jesus stayed hidden for 30 years before 3 years of ministry that changed everything. The pattern is divine. The delay is strategic. You weren't rejected from their circles because you weren't good enough. You were extracted because you were too dangerous to leave exposed. God pulled you out of their sightlines because if they had seen your full potential early, they would have mobilized everything to stop you. But they missed their window. While you were crying about closed doors, heaven was installing new locks. While you were questioning your worth, God was upgrading your spiritual security clearance. While you were feeling invisible, you were actually being made invincible. That depression you fought through, that was your cocoon. That isolation you endured, that was your incubation chamber. That rejection you survived, that was your camouflage being perfected. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared for a mission so classified that even some angels don't have clearance to know the full scope of what you're carrying. And now the concealment period is ending. You feel it, don't you? That restlessness, that stirring, that sense that something is shifting in the spiritual atmosphere around your life. That's not anxiety, that's activation. Your spiritual GPS is coming online. Your divine assignments are being unsealed. Your heavenly intel is being downloaded in real time. The same voice that told you to be still is now whispering, move. The same God who hid you is now positioning you for full disclosure. You are not a wounded soul carrying trauma. You are a cosmic disruption carrying classified information. You are not a survivor of betrayal. You are an undercover agent whose cover has been so perfect that even you forgot who you really are. But the mission briefing is coming through clearly now. You didn't ask to be chosen for this assignment, but God assigned legions to ensure your mission never fails. You've got backup you can't see, reinforcements you don't know about, and authority you haven't fully activated yet. Every person who rejected you was actually being repelled by the spiritual frequency you carry. Every door that closed was heaven redirecting you away from distractions and toward your deployment zone. You weren't hidden because you were weak. You were concealed because your glory was too dangerous to release prematurely. Like a sword kept in its sheath until the moment of battle, like a wildfire contained until the wind is right, like a secret weapon held in reserve until the enemy thinks they've won. You were not born to be understood by small minds operating on limited intel. You were deployed to be undeniable. The masquerade is over. The concealment phase is complete. The hidden season has served its purpose. What's been building in the shadows is about to step into the light. What's been whispered in secret is about to be shouted from rooftops. What's been classified is about to be declassified. You are not emerging. You are erupting. You are not recovering. You are revealing. The concealment phase is over. The loading screen has disappeared. What was hidden is now revealed, and what was whispered in darkness is now echoing in the light of who you've always been. Chosen one, take a breath. Let this truth settle in your bones like ancient fire finding its home. You are not a survivor of trauma. You are a carrier of testimony. You are not a victim of betrayal. You are a vessel of breakthrough. Every scar you wear is actually a seal of divine approval. Every wound a badge of honor in a war most people don't even know is being fought. The people who hurt you, who manipulated you, who left you bleeding in seasons when you needed them most, they were not your destiny. They were your detour, and every detour was actually a divine reroute, steering you away from destinations too small for the magnitude of what you carry. That door they slammed in your face, consider it permanently sealed from the inside. That relationship they ended, the lease has expired, and there's no renewal option. That job they denied you, that opportunity they blocked, that circle they excluded you from, the building has been condemned, and you've already been relocated to higher ground. You cannot go back to people who never recognized your value. You cannot return to spaces that were too small for your spirit. You cannot revisit rooms where your light was treated like a distraction instead of a gift. The bridge isn't just burned, it's been demolished by divine order. Because God said in Isaiah 43, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." The wilderness you walked through wasn't punishment. It was preparation for the streams that are now breaking forth in the wasteland of your former life. The desert wasn't designed to kill you. It was designed to birth something in you that could only emerge in the place where everything else died. Every person who said you were too much, too intense, too deep, too sensitive, they were not qualified to measure the immensity of what God placed inside you. Every voice that told you to shrink, to settle, to be realistic, to stop dreaming so big, those voices were not speaking from heaven's vocabulary. You are sealed, not just protected, but marked with divine ownership. There is a signature written across your spirit in ink that hell cannot erase, in a language demons cannot read, with authority they cannot challenge. Your name is not just in the book of life, it's carved into the foundation stones of eternity. Your assignment is not just documented in heaven's archives, it's encrypted in your DNA. Your destiny is not just planned in the courts of God, it's already accomplished in the realm where time doesn't exist, and your victory has been celebrating for eons. This is your spiritual declaration. Say it with me, say it in your heart, say it until it rewrites every lie you've ever believed about yourself. I am sealed by the blood of the Lamb. I am sent with the authority of heaven. I am unstoppable because my mission is written in eternity. The enemy knows my name, but he cannot touch my purpose. I am not who they said I was. I am who God says I am. I am chosen. I am deployed. I am dangerous to darkness and deadly to deception. If this message found you, it was not by accident. If these words are resonating in places you forgot existed, you are experiencing divine recognition. Your spirit is confirming what heaven has always known. You are not random. You are strategic. You are not forgotten. You are positioned. You are not broken. You are breakthrough walking in skin. Share this message with someone who needs to remember they're not cursed, they're chosen. Drop 777-inch the comments if you know your concealment season is over and your manifestation season has begun. Let your engagement be your declaration that you're ready to walk in the fullness of what's been building in the shadows of your silence. Subscribe to this channel not just for content, but for community. Join a tribe of awakened souls who refuse to apologize for their light, who won't shrink to make others comfortable, who understand that their deepest wounds have become their greatest weapons. To everyone supporting this ministry through donations and super thanks, you're not just funding messages, you're financing revelations. You're not just giving money, you're sowing into the spiritual awakening of souls who've been sleeping in the middle of their own miracles. Hit that notification bell because what's coming next will continue to unlock what's been locked inside you for years. Remember this, the same voice that called you out of darkness is the same voice that's calling you into the light of who you've always been. The demons that once mocked you now whisper your name with trembling, and the God who sealed your destiny, he's just getting started. You were hidden, now you're loaded, and what loads in secret erupts in power.